Are you aging faster than ever, relying on daily pills just to survive, while modern medicine fails to keep you young? But today, I'm going to show you 20 anti-aging plants eaten by the longest-living people on Earth. There are places on this planet where people routinely live past 100, not in hospitals, not on medication, just living, working in their gardens at 90, eating breakfast with their great-grandchildren. When scientists measured their blood markers and telomere lengths, they found that the plants these people ate were doing something nothing in a pharmaceutical pipeline has managed to replicate. Not supplements, the actual plants. Stay with me, because Plant 7 contains a compound researchers are now calling a potential longevity molecule, and the populations eating it show the lowest documented rates of cognitive decline ever measured in any human group. And Plant 18 was studied specifically because the community consuming it daily showed almost zero incidence of the cardiovascular disease that kills 17 million people globally every year. Let's get started. Plant number 1, turmeric, the golden root that slows time. In the Okinawan village of Ogimi, where the world's highest concentration of centenarians live, turmeric isn't a trendy latte addition. It's in the soil, it's in the tea, it's in the food. It has been, without interruption, for over 1,000 years. The compound responsible is curcumin, and it does something that took scientists decades to appreciate. It operates on multiple aging pathways simultaneously. It activates sirtuins, proteins sometimes called longevity genes. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and reduces amyloid plaque accumulation. Rates of Alzheimer's in turmeric-consuming Indian populations are roughly a quarter of U.S. rates in some studies. Here's the practical truth most people miss. Curcumin has poor bioavailability alone. The Okinawans and South Asians eating it for centuries intuited the solution. Combined with black pepper, piperine increases curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%. 2,000. Not a typo. The longest-living people have been combining these two spices for 1,000 years without knowing the biochemistry. One spice. Multiple aging pathways, 2,000 years of evidence, and all it needs is a pinch of black pepper. Plant number 2, garlic, the stinking rose that extends life. Every Blue Zone diet has garlic, every single one. The Sardinians of Barbagia eat it daily. The people of Icaria, the island the New York Times called the place where people forget to die, consume it in quantities that would alarm a cardiologist who hadn't seen the actual cardiovascular data from that island. Allicin, released when garlic is crushed, feeds beneficial gut bacteria while inhibiting pathogenic strains. Gut microbiome composition is one of the primary drivers of systemic inflammation, the chronic low-grade state underlying virtually every age-related disease. The tradition of crushing garlic and waiting 10 minutes before cooking has a precise scientific basis. Full allicin conversion. These populations didn't know the biochemistry, they knew the outcome. Allicin's metabolites show consistent cardiovascular protective effects, reduced blood pressure, improved endothelial function, lowered LDL oxidation, better gut, lower inflammation, longer life. The Sardinian grandmothers knew it without the peer review. Plant number 3, extra virgin olive oil, the Mediterranean paradox explained. For decades, epidemiologists were confused. Populations eating high-fat diets centered around olive oil had dramatically lower cardiovascular disease rates than dietary guidelines predicted. The confusion dissolved when researchers stopped focusing on the fat and started looking at the polyphenols. Extra virgin olive oil contains over 30 distinct phenolic compounds. The most significant is oleocanthal, which functions as a natural anti-inflammatory through the same COX-1 and COX-2 pathways as ibuprofen. The fresh, throat-burning sensation of high-quality olive oil is oleocanthal stimulating the same receptors that register anti-inflammatory drugs. You are tasting the anti-inflammatory effect in your food. Oleuropean aglycone, found in higher concentrations in olive leaves, activates autophagy, the cellular self-cleaning mechanism that clears damaged proteins. Declining autophagy efficiency is a hallmark of aging. Oleuropean restarts the cleanup crew. The paradox was never a paradox. It was the wrong question. The question was never about fat. It was always about the polyphenols coming with it. Plant number 4, fava beans, the Sardinian secret. Researchers flew in to study. When demographic researchers first analyzed mortality data from Barbagia, Sardinia, the epicenter of male longevity in the documented world, the numbers were statistically improbable. They went to look, and they found fava beans. Fava beans contain spermidine, a polyamine that triggers autophagy, a process researchers call nutritional autophagy induction. A study in Nature Medicine found dietary spermidine was inversely associated with overall mortality. The more spermidine people ate, the less likely they were to die during observation. Fava beans are one of the richest dietary sources available. They also contain L-dopa, dopamine's direct precursor, GABA supporting neurological calm, and significant folate and manganese. Sardinian centenarians have eaten fava beans their entire lives. The researchers who flew in left recommending everyone else should too. The food researchers flew across the world to study costs less than €2 a portion. The data they brought back changed longevity science. Plant number 5, green tea, what Okinawa's oldest people drink every single day. The oldest verified living human being for much of the 21st century was Jiroemon Kimura of Japan, who lived to 116 years and 54 days. He drank green tea every morning until the day he died. That is not a scientific citation, but it is not nothing. Green tea's primary compounds, catechins, particularly EGCG, activate AMPK, the cellular energy sensor governing metabolic efficiency and mitochondrial function. Metformin, now studied as an anti-aging pharmaceutical, works partly through AMPK activation. Green tea does it through food. L-theanine crosses the blood-brain barrier and modulates alpha wave activity, producing alert calm without the anxiety spike coffee produces. This neurological state, replicated in EEG studies, may partly explain the psychological resilience centenarian populations demonstrate. Okinawans drink sunpin cha throughout the day, not as a wellness ritual, but as a default beverage. The habit is centuries old. The science is decades new. The outcomes are extraordinary. Plant number 6, rosemary, the herb that grows wild where people live forever. The village of Acciaroli on the southern Italian coast has roughly 700 residents. Approximately 1 in 10 is over 100 years old. A joint research team from UC San Diego and Sapienza University of Rome traveled there specifically to understand why. Rosemary grows wild there. It is in virtually every meal. It has been for as long as anyone remembers. Rosemary contains carnosic acid, which activates the NRF2 pathway, the master regulator of the body's antioxidant defense system. NRF2 activation causes cells to upregulate their own glutathione. Rosemary doesn't just provide antioxidants, it instructs cells to make more. Research found that simply being in a room where rosemary aroma diffused improved memory performance and processing speed. Compounds, specifically 1.8-cineol, are detectable in blood after inhalation and correlate with cognitive performance. The Acciaroli residents weren't doing aromatherapy. They were cooking with what grew outside. The research team found it in every kitchen, a herb growing wild on the hillsides of longevity hotspots. Researchers found it in every centenarian's kitchen. That is not a coincidence. Plant number 7, ashwagandha, the adaptogen that changes how your cells age. Most anti-aging interventions try to reverse damage after it occurs. Ashwagandha appears to change how the body responds to the conditions that cause damage in the first place. That difference is fundamental. Indian communities with traditional ashwagandha use show significantly lower age-related cognitive decline than comparable populations, driving the randomized controlled trials that followed. Withanalydes modulate the HPA axis governing the cortisol stress response. Chronic cortisol elevation is one of the most consistent predictors of accelerated aging, telomere shortening, hippocampal volume loss, immune dysregulation. Ashwagandha doesn't suppress cortisol, it normalizes the system regulating it. A 2021 randomized controlled trial found ashwagandha was associated with significant telomere lengthening over 8 weeks, and a plant compound actually lengthening telomeres in human subjects was remarkable enough to generate significant follow-up research. This is the compound researchers are calling a potential longevity molecule. It has been consumed by humans for 3,000 years. Plant number 8, bitter melon, the vegetable that explains Okinawa's metabolic health. Type 2 diabetes is widely understood as a disease of modern dietary patterns. Less discussed is that it is one of the most consistent accelerators of biological aging, affecting vascular health, kidney function, cognitive decline, and systemic inflammation simultaneously. Okinawan centenarians show some of the lowest rates of metabolic disease ever documented in any human population. Bitter melon, Goya in Japanese, is a central reason why. Bitter melon contains charantin, polypeptide P, and visine, compounds activating GLT4 receptor expression in muscle cells, improving glucose uptake without requiring the pancreas. A 2011 randomized trial showed effects comparable to metformin in some participants. Okinawans don't eat it as a health supplement. They eat it because it tastes like home, stir-fried with egg and tofu in traditional champuru, a dietary fixture for centuries. The anti-diabetic pharmaceutical industry spends billions trying to replicate what Goya has been doing in Okinawan kitchens for generations. Plant number 9, walnuts, the brain-shaped food that protects your brain. The fact that walnuts look almost exactly like a human brain, 2 lobes, wrinkled surface, protective shell, is either the most extraordinary coincidence in food history or natural symbolism that should have been taken more seriously centuries ago. Walnuts are the only tree nut with significant omega-3 content, a precursor to the EPA and DHA the brain requires for membrane integrity. They contain ellagic acid, which ferments into urolithins that trigger mitophagy, the clearance of damaged mitochondria that otherwise continue producing free radicals while generating less energy. A study following 6,000 older EGK found those consuming walnuts showed significantly slower cognitive decline. The MIND diet identifies walnuts as one of the most important specific foods for brain aging outcomes. The Seventh-day Adventists of Loma Linda, one of the 5 blue zones, show the highest walnut consumption in the UGK and some of the best cognitive aging outcomes in the world. It looks like a brain, protects the brain, eaten by the longest living populations for centuries. At some point, the symbolism still be ghosts being coincidence. Plant number 10, purple sweet potato, Okinawa's most extraordinary longevity food. The staple carbohydrate of Okinawan centenarians was not rice or wheat, it was the purple sweet potato, beni imo, constituting approximately 69% of total caloric intake at its peak, nearly 7 out of every 10 calories, from one root vegetable. And those people are the longest living on EGK. The beni imo's purple color comes from anthocyanins in concentrations exceeding most food sources. They reduce oxidative stress in arterial walls, protect LDL from oxidation, support gut lining integrity, and demonstrate neuroprotective effects. The color is not incidental. The color is the medicine. Purple sweet potato has a significantly lower glycemic index than white rice, despite being starch-based, due to resistant starch and fiber. The slow glucose release meant this population maintained exceptional metabolic health across their entire lifespan. Traditional Okinawan centenarians rarely developed the metabolic dysfunction plaguing modern populations. Every purple, blue, and red pigment in produce is a different anthocyanin variant. Each contributes to the systemic protection their diet delivered in extraordinary concentrations. Plant number 11, ginger, the root that fights aging at the molecular level. Ginger appears in the traditional cuisines of every longevity culture warm enough to grow it. Geographically separate cultures independently discovering the same biological truth. Gingerols in fresh ginger and shogaols in dried are among the most potent natural inhibitors of NF-kappa B signaling in food chemistry. NF-kappa B is the master transcription factor for inflammatory gene expression. When chronically activated, as it is in modern dietary patterns, cells continuously produce pro-inflammatory cytokines that damage tissue, accelerate telomere erosion, and drive virtually every chronic age-related disease. A meta-analysis of 16 randomized controlled trials found consistent CRP reductions following ginger supplementation, effect sizes comparable to low-dose anti-inflammatory medication without NSAID side effects. A study comparing ginger extract to ibuprofen in knee osteoarthritis patients found comparable pain score reductions. For populations where physical movement determines healthy aging, ginger's pain management properties have direct longevity implications. Blue zone populations never distinguish between food and medicine. In traditional understanding, this was never a contradiction. Plant number 12, pomegranate, the fruit of immortality that science took seriously. Ancient Persian tradition called pomegranate the fruit of immortality. Ancient Egyptian medicine prescribed it for vitality. Ancient Greek mythology located it at the center of death and resurrection. Every major civilization that encountered it assigned significance beyond mere nutrition. Modern researchers encountering its phenolic compound profile began to understand why. When pomegranate elagitannins are metabolized by specific gut bacteria, they produce urolithin A, triggering mitophagy, clearance of damaged mitochondria, with efficiency not replicated by any other dietary source. A Nature Medicine study found urolithin A supplementation improved muscle function and endurance in older adults through restored mitochondrial quality. The caveat: roughly 40% of people lack the bacterial strains required for efficient conversion. For those who convert, pomegranate is one of the most targeted dietary interventions for mitochondrial aging available. The ancient intuition was directionally correct. The mechanism is stranger and more specific than any ancient tradition could have imagined. Ancient civilizations called it the fruit of immortality. Modern researchers found the specific molecular pathway. The intuition was right all along. Plant number 13, seaweed. Why Okinawa's ocean produces centenarians. Okinawans consume more seaweed per capita than any other population on the planet. Kombu, wakame, and hijiki appear daily in traditional Okinawan cooking, not as a health food novelty, but woven into the cuisine's foundation. Seaweed contains fucoxanthin, found only in marine algae, which activates UCP1 protein in white adipose tissue, promoting thermogenesis and fat oxidation. The metabolic profile of traditional Okinawan centenarians, lean body mass, minimal visceral fat, preserved insulin sensitivity into extreme old age, is consistent with regular fucoxanthin intake. Fucoidan, a sulfated polysaccharide in brown seaweeds, supports hematopoietic stem cell populations, the cells producing immune cells that decline with age in ways compromising immune surveillance and increasing cancer risk. Iodine deficiency, common in inland populations, accelerates metabolic dysfunction across aging. Okinawans eating seaweed daily have never had this problem. The ocean has been providing what the land couldn't. Plant number 14. Beans and legumes, the single most predictive food for living past 100. In 2004, Dan Buettner published the original Blue Zone analysis, identifying the 5 regions with the highest centenarian concentrations on Earth, and analyzing every dietary factor across all 5 regions. One food group appeared with statistical consistency no other matched. Not olive oil, not fish, not vegetables, beans and legumes. A study published in Asia-Pacific Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that for every 20 grams of legumes eaten daily, mortality risk decreased by approximately 7 to 8%, calling legumes the most important dietary predictor of survival in older people of different ethnicities. The most important. In the largest cross-cultural longevity study ever conducted, legume fiber feeds gut bacteria producing short-chain fatty acids that reduce intestinal permeability and systemic inflammation. Legumes also reduce IGF-1 signaling, which when chronically elevated accelerates aging and increases cancer risk. Sardinians eat fava and cannellini beans. Icarians eat black-eyed peas and lentils. Nicoyans eat black beans. Okinawans eat traditional soy. Every longevity hotspot, the same answer. Plant number 15. Wild blueberries, the brain's preferred anti-aging food. Neuroscientists studying cognitive aging have a running observation. Populations with high wild berry consumption don't develop dementia at the rates their demographics predict, seen in Scandinavian lingonberry research, Sardinian myrtleberry studies, and the data on Loma Linda Adventists. Wild blueberries contain pterostilbene, structurally similar to resveratrol, but more bioavailable, which crosses the blood-brain barrier to reduce oxidative stress in hippocampal neurons. The hippocampus is where memory consolidation occurs, and its atrophy is the earliest indicator of Alzheimer's pathology. A study following over 16,000 women found those consuming the most blueberries showed cognitive aging delayed by up to 2.5 years, a meaningful difference in late-life independence and function. Wild berries are smaller, more bitter, more intensely colored than commercial varieties. The intensity is the polyphenol concentration. The bitterness is the medicine. Wild berries have been growing in longevity hotspot regions for centuries. The brain science explaining why eating them matters got there eventually. Plant number 16. Natto, the fermented soy that Japanese researchers won't stop writing about. Natto is not appealing on first encounter. It is sticky. It smells pungent. The strings it forms when lifted with chopsticks make first-time eaters hesitant. Natto-consuming regions of Japan have the lowest cardiovascular disease mortality. Japan already has the world's longest life expectancy. Natto-consuming regions are outliers even within Japan. The responsible compound is vitamin K2-MK7, produced during fermentation by Bacillus subtilis natto. K2-MK7 activates matrix GLA protein, which directs calcium away from arterial walls and toward bone, preventing, and in some studies partially reversing arterial calcification. Natto also contains nattokinase, a fibrinolytic enzyme breaking down fibrin, the protein forming dangerous clots. Its antithrombotic effects have generated enough pharmaceutical interest that researchers are developing synthetic analogs. The Dutch Rotterdam study specifically analyzed K2 intake after noticing the Japanese data. The oldest regions of Japan eat the sticky fermented food nobody wants for breakfast. The cardiovascular outcomes are why researchers keep studying it. Plant number 17. Moringa, the miracle tree. Centenarian populations knew first. There are trees growing in the nutritionally marginal environments of sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia that fed communities through drought and famine for centuries. Those communities did not develop the chronic disease profiles of modern populations eating nutritionally abundant but biochemically depleted diets. Moringa is central to understanding why. Dried moringa leaves contain approximately 25 grams of protein per 100 grams, alongside a micronutrient profile with no genuine parallel in the plant world. 7 times the vitamin C of oranges, 4 times the calcium of milk, 4 times the vitamin A of carrots, 3 times the potassium of bananas, more iron than spinach per gram. Moringa's isothiocyanates and chlorogenic acid demonstrate consistent anti-inflammatory and metabolic effects. A study in postmenopausal women found reductions in oxidative damage markers that strengthened over time, suggesting biological adaptation rather than acute response. Traditional practitioners across Ayurvedic and African medicine classified moringa as rejuvenating. Modern molecular biology is identifying why. The miracle tree wasn't called that by accident. Plant number 18. Grapes and